The deafening roar of the engines faded as the plane touched down on the ice runway. The sheer noise had been deafening, but now that it was gone, there was only silence. I shifted in my seat and leaned toward the small porthole window, hoping for my first glimpse of the South Pole. Nothing but white met my gaze, an endless expanse of snow and ice, broken only by the distant shape of the Amundsen Scott South Pole Station, a collection of metallic structures huddled together as if trying to ward off the alien cold. This was it. This was my home for the next 6 months. I had spent countless hours imagining this moment, but nothing could have prepared me for the sheer isolation that stretched out before me. There was no horizon, no features to break up the monotony, just a world of frozen stillness. I reached for the zipper of my parka, feeling the bulk of my NASA-issued gear against my body. A small screen on my sleeve displayed the external temperature. -58 degrees Fahrenheit, though the wind chill made it feel far worse. I could already feel the bitter cold creeping in through the cracks in the plane, nipping at my face despite the warmth inside. My name is Dr. Samantha Reeves, and I'm an astrobiologist for NASA. This mission was supposed to be my shot at redemption, a second chance after my career had nearly crumbled beneath me 3 years ago. Back then, I had made a critical error while analysing potential biosignatures from Martian soil samples, a mistake that led to an embarrassing and very public retraction of my work. My reputation had taken a nosedive, and I had been relegated to desk work, poring over datasets far away from any fieldwork. I'd spent every waking moment since trying to claw my way back to respectability, to prove that I was still worthy of the position I had worked so hard for. And now here I was at the bottom of the world, tasked with investigating one of the most exciting discoveries in recent history. It wasn't just a new assignment, it was a lifeline. I stood and grabbed my duffel bag, slinging it over my shoulder as I joined the rest of the crew disembarking the plane. The wind hit me like a wall as soon as I stepped outside, a brutal, unrelenting force that stole the breath from my lungs. It was hard to imagine that human beings could survive here in one of the most inhospitable places on Earth. My boots crunched through the hard-packed snow as I hurried toward the station's entrance, my breath freezing in clouds before my face. I barely noticed the figure approaching me until a voice called out over the wind. "Dr. Reeves." I turned to see a tall, lean man waving at me from the edge of the platform leading to the station's main entrance. He was bundled up in layers of Arctic gear, his face mostly obscured by a heavy scarf and snow goggles. Even so, I could see his welcoming smile through the frost clinging to his facial hair. "I'm Dr. Eric Lawson, station manager. Welcome to the bottom of the world." I shook his gloved hand, trying to muster a smile of my own despite the cold that seemed to bite through every layer of my clothing. "Thanks, Doctor. I'm eager to get started." The briefing I received was sparse, to say the least. My voice was muffled through my scarf, and I struggled to keep it steady in the biting cold. Lawson's expression tightened almost imperceptibly, though it was hard to tell with the wind whipping between us. "Yes, well, we'll get you up to speed soon enough. For now, let's get you settled in. It's a bit of a walk from here." I followed him into the entrance, grateful to finally be out of the freezing wind. The blast of warmth that greeted me inside was almost overwhelming, and I had to pause to adjust to the drastic change in temperature. The station's interior was a stark contrast to the frozen wasteland outside. Modern, sterile, and utilitarian with walls of brushed steel and soft overhead lighting. The hum of ventilation systems filled the space, a comforting reminder that we were, for the moment, sheltered from the brutal conditions beyond these walls. The next few hours were a whirlwind of orientation. Dr. Lawson gave me a tour of the station's main areas: the mess hall, the labs, the living quarters, and of course, the communications room. I met some of the key personnel along the way: engineers, researchers, and technicians, each of them wrapped in the same air of quiet efficiency that seemed to permeate the entire station. Everyone was professional, polite, but there was an undercurrent of something that I couldn't quite place. Tension, perhaps. Or maybe it was just the natural result of spending months in such an isolated, confined environment. It wasn't until after dinner that I finally started to get some answers. Dr. Lawson led me to a small conference room on the station's lower level, where a group of serious-faced scientists awaited us. The room was lit by a single overhead light, casting long shadows across the walls. A projector sat on the far side of the room, its standby light blinking softly in the dim space. The air here felt different, heavier, more oppressive. I could feel the weight of the unspoken words hanging in the room like a cloud. "Dr. Reeves," Lawson began once we were seated, his tone more formal now. "What I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest levels." My pulse quickened. Classified? That hadn't been mentioned in any of the briefings. He continued, "3 months ago, our ground-penetrating radar detected an anomaly 2 miles beneath the ice sheet. Initial scans suggested a cavity of some kind, but as we investigated further, we found, well, it's easier if I show you." He nodded toward the projector, and the lights dimmed as the screen flickered to life. The first images were grainy and indistinct, the kind of raw data you might expect from an early-stage radar scan. But as the resolution improved, the shapes on the screen began to coalesce into something unmistakably artificial. Symmetrical lines, sharp angles, and what appeared to be interior chambers. I felt my breath catch in my throat. "Is that—" I trailed off, hardly daring to believe what I was seeing. "A structure," Lawson confirmed, his expression unreadable. "Buried under 2 miles of ice, in a location that hasn't seen sunlight in millions of years." The implications hit me like a tidal wave. "How old?" I managed to ask, my mind racing to catch up. "That's where it gets even stranger," a woman to my left spoke up. "Dr. Helen Chang, geologist," she introduced herself, her voice calm but strained. "Based on ice core samples and our best dating methods, we estimate the ice above the structure to be approximately 14 million years old." I felt dizzy, the room seeming to tilt around me. That's impossible," I whispered. "Homo sapiens have only existed for about 300,000 years. Even our earliest hominid ancestors only go back 6 million years." "Exactly," Lawson said, his expression grim. "Whatever built this, it wasn't us. And that's why you're here, Dr. Reeves. We need your expertise in astrobiology to help us understand what we're dealing with." My mind reeled as I tried to process the enormity of what they were saying. A structure built by something not human buried beneath millions of years of ice. This was more than just a scientific discovery. It was a revelation that could change our understanding of history, of life itself. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into the work, determined to prove my worth to the team and, more importantly, to myself. We set up a drilling operation to reach the structure, using advanced hot water drilling technology to minimize damage to the ice and the structure itself. The station buzzed with activity, every member of the team focused on their specific tasks. And yet, the tension I had felt on my first day only seemed to grow as we got closer to our target depth. The strange occurrences started soon after. At first, it was minor things, equipment malfunctions that no one could quite explain, tools disappearing only to turn up in strange places. But then, people started reporting odd noises in the night, whispered voices, footsteps in the hallways, even though the station was silent during the long Antarctic night. The darkness outside was constant now, with the sun having set for the long winter, and it seemed to press in on us from all sides. One night, I woke with a start, my heart pounding in my chest. I could have sworn I heard someone, or something, moving in my room. But when I flicked on the light, there was nothing, just the quiet hum of the station and the soft rustle of the wind outside. "It's just stress," Dr. Chang assured me one morning over coffee, though her eyes betrayed her own unease. "We're isolated, working on something unprecedented. It's bound to affect us psychologically." I nodded, though I wasn't entirely convinced. Something felt off. Something deeper than just isolation and stress. The breakthrough came on day 47. We finally breached the ice above the structure. The entire team gathered in the main lab, staring at the live feed from the borehole as we lowered a high-resolution camera into the cavity below. I watched, barely breathing, as the screen filled with darkness, just the blank, empty void of 2 miles of ice. "Signal's coming through," Jamie, our tech specialist, announced. The room seemed to hold its collective breath as the first images flickered onto the screen. At first, there was nothing but jagged ice walls, dimly lit by the camera's LEDs. But as we descended further, the camera captured something extraordinary. "My God," someone whispered. The structure came into view, a vast, angular form, its surface gleaming with an oily sheen that seemed almost organic in the low light. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen. The architecture was bizarre, with swooping curves that defied logical construction, and yet everything about it seemed deliberately engineered. The camera panned across the structure's surface, revealing more details. Strange markings etched into the walls, lines that looked like writing, but were utterly alien in form. And then, just as the camera was about to reach the far side of the cavity, I saw it, a shape in the corner of the frame. "Wait!" I called out. "Go back! There!" Jamie rewound the feed, focusing on the area I had indicated. There, barely visible against the strange shimmering metal, was what looked like a handprint. But it was wrong. It had too many fingers. Elongated, jointed in unnatural ways, as if designed for a creature that didn't belong to this world. "We need to get down there," I said, my scientific curiosity warring with the sense of dread that was building in my gut. Lawson nodded, though his expression was grim. "We'll need a team. Volunteers only." Over the next few days, we assembled a small group for the descent. I was joined by Dr. Chang, Dr. Lawson, and 2 of our most experienced ice climbers, Alex and Maria. We spent hours going over the mission plan, triple-checking our equipment and rehearsing emergency protocols. But as prepared as we were, nothing could have truly readied us for what we were about to face. The day of the descent was bitterly cold, even by Antarctic standards. We gathered at the edge of the borehole, our breath steaming in the frigid air as we made our final checks. The tension was palpable, and no one spoke as we geared up for the journey into the unknown. As we clipped into the rope, Lawson pulled me aside, his expression unusually serious. "Samantha," he said, using my first name for the first time since I had arrived. "I need you to promise me something. If you see anything at all that seems dangerous, you call for an immediate evacuation. We have no idea what we're walking into down there." I nodded, though the chill that ran down my spine had nothing to do with the cold. The descent was a grueling, nerve-wracking affair. 2 miles of ice surrounded us on all sides as we slowly made our way down the narrow shaft, the only sound the soft creak of our climbing gear and the faint, rhythmic huff of our breath. Every so often I would glance up at the small circle of light far above us, the surface of the world we had left behind. The deeper we went, the darker it became, until all that remained was the weak glow of our headlamps against the frozen walls. I lost track of time somewhere along the way. The monotony of the descent, combined with the oppressive cold, made it feel like hours had passed by the time we finally reached the bottom. Alex, our lead climber, was the first to step onto the structure's surface. He reached out hesitantly, his gloved hand brushing against the strange metallic material. "It's warm," he reported, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. "The metal, or whatever it is, it's not cold like it should be." I stepped forward, my boots crunching on the icy ground as I approached the wall. Up close, the surface was even stranger than it had appeared on the camera. It wasn't just metal. It had an almost organic quality, like living tissue frozen in time. When I touched it, the material felt smooth and slick, but there was a subtle give beneath my fingers, as if the surface wasn't entirely solid. Dr. Chang was already at work, setting up her spectrometer and muttering to herself as she took samples of the strange material. "This is incredible," she whispered. "The atomic structure. It doesn't make sense. It's like nothing I've ever seen before." I walked slowly along the perimeter of the structure, my headlamp casting long, eerie shadows across the walls. The architecture was even more bizarre up close. It was as if the structure had been designed by a mind that didn't operate on the same principles as ours. The angles were all wrong, the curves too fluid, too perfect. It was beautiful, in a way, but it also filled me with a deep sense of unease. It was Maria who found the entrance. She had been exploring one of the far walls when she let out a sharp cry, stumbling back as if she had seen something terrible. "It moved!" she shouted, her voice trembling with fear. "The wall! It moved!" We all rushed over, our headlamps illuminating the spot where she had been standing. At first, I saw nothing, just the same strange, shimmering metal. But then I heard it, a low rumble, so faint I almost missed it. The ground beneath our feet vibrated, and a moment beneath us, a section of the wall began to shift. The once seamless surface rippled, as if stirred by an unseen force. What had looked like a solid wall moments before was now separating, panels sliding back with a smooth mechanical precision. The sound was soft but ominous, like ancient machinery awakening after millennia of silence. I froze, my pulse quickening as the opening slowly revealed a dark passageway leading into the heart of the structure. The walls inside were made of the same strange metallic substance, gleaming faintly under the light of our headlamps. The air that drifted out was cold, unnaturally so, carrying a faint metallic scent that sent a chill down my spine. "What the hell?" Alex muttered, stepping forward cautiously. Dr. Lawson joined us, his expression grim. "We stick to the plan. We'll explore as much as we can, but we don't take unnecessary risks. Everyone stays together." Despite the unease gnawing at me, curiosity pulled me forward. We had come too far to turn back now. This was the discovery of a lifetime. No, of humanity's entire history. The sheer implications of it made my heart race. If there was any chance of finding answers inside, we had to take it. One by one, we entered the passageway, our boots echoing softly on the smooth floor as we moved deeper into the structure. The walls seemed to close in around us, their surface shifting ever so slightly in the glow of our lamps, like they were somehow alive. Every step felt heavier than the last, as if the weight of the unknown was pressing down on us. The deeper we went, the more the silence became oppressive. There was no hum of machinery, no distant echoes, just the eerie quiet of a place that had been sealed away for millions of years. I found myself glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see something lurking in the shadows. "Look at this," Dr. Chang said, her voice barely above a whisper. She was kneeling by a section of the wall, brushing away a layer of frost to reveal more of the strange markings we'd seen earlier. Up close, the symbols were even more intricate, their lines impossibly fine, etched into the material with an almost otherworldly precision. "I've never seen anything like this," she continued, her voice tinged with awe. "It's not just writing, it's a language. But it's not human. The symmetry, the patterns. This is something far beyond anything we know." A shiver ran down my spine. I had spent my entire career studying potential signs of life beyond Earth, but to be standing here in a place that defied all understanding of history was overwhelming. Whoever, or whatever, had built this, they weren't like us. And yet, they had been here. They had left something behind. We pressed on, the passageway sloping gently downward as it led us deeper into the structure. The air grew colder, almost suffocatingly so, and the metallic scent intensified, filling my lungs with each breath. I felt a growing sense of dread, but I couldn't tell if it was the atmosphere or something more. Something about this place felt wrong. "Hey, does anyone else hear that?" Maria's voice broke through the quiet, startling us. We all stopped, straining to listen. At first I heard nothing but the sound of our breathing, the faint creak of our gear. But then, faint and distant, I caught it. A low, almost imperceptible hum. It was rhythmic, pulsing like a heartbeat, just at the edge of hearing. It was coming from deeper within. "What is that?" Alex asked, his voice tense. "I don't know," Dr. Lawson replied, frowning. "But we proceed with caution. If it's a power source, or some kind of active technology, we need to understand it." Reluctantly, we continued forward. The hum grew slightly louder, still faint but insistent, tugging at the edges of my awareness. It felt ancient, like something that had been dormant for eons was beginning to stir. We reached a large chamber at the end of the passage. The space was vast, its ceiling disappearing into darkness far above us. The walls were covered in more of the strange markings, glowing faintly with an eerie, pulsating light. In the center of the room stood a monolithic structure, an obelisk of sorts made of the same shimmering material as the walls. It was unlike anything I had ever seen, towering at least 30 feet high, its surface smooth and featureless, except for the same intricate symbols that seemed to pulse in rhythm with the hum. Dr. Chang approached cautiously, her breath visible in the freezing air. This is the source, she said, her voice trembling slightly. It's emitting some kind of energy, but I have no idea what it is. I stepped closer, feeling the pull of the obelisk. There was something deeply unsettling about it, yet I couldn't look away. My mind raced with questions. What was its purpose? Who built it? And why had it been buried here, forgotten beneath millions of years of ice? Without warning, the hum intensified, the light from the symbols brightening to an almost blinding level. The ground beneath us trembled and I staggered backward, my heart hammering in my chest. "Get back!" Lawson shouted, pulling us away from the obelisk. Before any of us could react, a sharp crack echoed through the chamber, followed by a deep, resonating boom. The obelisk began to shift, its surface splitting open like a cracked egg. A searing light spilled out from within, bathing the room in an unnatural glow. The hum had transformed into a deafening roar, and I could feel the air vibrating with energy. Then I saw it, something emerging from the obelisk. A figure, indistinct at first, but growing clearer with each passing second. It was tall, impossibly so, its form shifting and flickering like it was barely tethered to reality. Its eyes, if they could be called eyes, glowed with an unnatural, malevolent light. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. A cold, paralyzing fear gripped me, unlike anything I'd ever experienced. "Run!" Lawson's voice cut through the terror. And in that moment, the spell was broken. We turned and fled, sprinting back through the passageway as the roar of the obelisk grew louder behind us. The walls seemed to close in, the air growing colder and thicker with every step. My lungs burned, my legs screaming with effort, but I didn't dare slow down. Not with whatever that thing was behind us. I caught only glimpses as we fled, a mass of writhing tentacles, eyes that glowed with an eldritch light, a maw filled with teeth that seemed to go on forever. The stuff of nightmares made flesh. Somehow, we made it back to the surface. The next few hours were a blur of alarms, evacuation orders, and frantic calls to NASA headquarters. But even as we prepared to abandon the station, I knew it was too late. We had awakened something ancient, something that had slumbered beneath the ice for millions of years, and now it was free. As I write this final log entry, huddled in the emergency shelter with the few survivors, I can hear it moving outside. The howling Antarctic wind can't quite mask the sound of metal tearing, of inhuman shrieks echoing across the barren landscape. We thought we were explorers, pushing the boundaries of human knowledge. Instead, we were grave robbers, disturbing a tomb that should have remained sealed for eternity. To anyone who finds this, the South Pole is lost. Quarantine the entire continent if you have to, but do not send anyone else here. Some secrets are meant to stay buried. This is Dr. Samantha Reeves, signing off for the last time. May God have mercy on our souls.